Talking with the experts.
Working capital and cash flow are often a constant issue for businesses. In episode 371, Trevor Wollard explains how his business can help other businesses survive.
It's like a line of credit for a business. It's an unsecured facility, so we don't ask for their house or their firstborn child, which is the case in some banks these days. They want everything. So we will give business access to a certain amount of money, and they can use that then to pay invoices that they need to be paid. We pay those invoices for those clients, and they have up to 90 days to pay us back. Again, another access to working capital as an alternate to a loan that sits in a business's bank account that they can use to pay for whatever they wish. We particularly pay businesses, suppliers, or subcontractors out of that working capital facility.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. I want to know and ask you this question. Do you have a lot of working capital or not much working capital? And how's your cash flow just quietly? My next guest, Trevor Wollard, is going to be discussing with us working capital and cash flow in business. And working capital and cash flow are often a constant issue for businesses, as we all know, for most of us anyway. The pandemic has increased the payment terms to businesses, and the flow of money has slowed down, stifling growth and often causing many businesses to shut down. There are a number of solutions or ideas out there to assist businesses in this area, and Trevor's going to enlighten us in what he does. Now, he started his first business when he was 19, and he's about 57 now or something stupid like that. No, he's not that old. He's only still a baby. And as one of the first traffic control companies in Australia, using 5 credit cards as his starting capital, this grew into a business that manufactured electronic traffic systems. And I remember the business a very, very long time ago when I used to live in country Victoria, and Trevor and I had some interactions back then, business-wise, of course. And so it's been a long time. I've known Trevor for a very long time, and his late father and his brother as well. So it's sort of like a get back together acquaintance podcast today. So welcome, Trevor, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Rose. G57, I don't know about that.
No, you're probably more like 27.
Yeah, if it was 19, I'm sure it was only a few years ago.
Yeah, that was, I recall your business when I was working for a training organisation, and I came to the business to get you to hire some apprentices. And that was, a fairly long time ago, and you were just a young whippersnapper back then.
Yeah, it was funny you mentioned Dad, and the business really started with his assistance and his backyard, because we had nowhere to really start the business, so it was his backyard, and he was sort of my mentor back then in terms of all things business, and helped me get started. Taught me a lot in terms of networking and being a manager and a boss. Some of those things I took on board, some of them I didn't, but eventually we had to part ways, so I had to sack him at some point, but he was always there in the background. I think he actually wanted to be sacked, so I could sort of take over the reins on my own, I suppose.
Yeah, Alan was a great human. He was so helpful to so many people. He helped a lot of people get up and going. I mean, not so much financially, but just with his wisdom and just his caring nature. I think he was just a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So tell me a little bit about FIFO Business. And the business that you own now.
Yeah, well, I suppose I don't class myself as necessarily a financial person or a finance person or a banking person. I come from a business background, having that business experience, like you mentioned, at 19, starting all the way back then. And, from the very start of my business journey, it was a constant struggle. Like I said, or like you said, starting off with no capital, essentially. The work that we did was very labor intensive. The supply costs were high, the labor costs were high, and we were doing a large amount of work with a large amount of costs for some big businesses that were in civil construction, John Holland's and Balderstone and Leighton's, very big organisations. And you put your invoice in and they'd pay you 45 days or whenever they got around to it. And when you've got wages to pay and suppliers to pay, it was a difficult time to try and manage the cash coming in under those particular circumstances. And luckily we had a friendly country bank manager that often gave us a helping hand. But we eventually found a solution to help our cash flow, and it was called factoring or invoice finance. And I'll mention that service which we provide now, but it was a very different beast back then. Essentially, when we put an invoice in to our clients, we were able to, or the finance company was able to pay us 80% of the value of that invoice when we raised it. So we didn't have to wait the 45 days to get paid. We were able to get a large amount of cash, or a significant amount of cash up front, to continue our business and to grow it and to pay wages and take on other work. So that really was the catalyst in seeing our business grow back some 25 years ago. Fast forward to probably 5 or 6 years ago, when our business, who I was in business with my brother, we grew it to quite a significant enterprise. We sold the traffic control division and started manufacturing electronic signs. It was still a constant battle in terms of cash flow and manufacturing and all that kind of thing, but we learned a lesson along the way. And I suppose, to cut a long story short, my brother and I were going in different directions in our business and personal lives, and he bought my share out of that particular business, and I found myself essentially with nothing to do. But so people kept, friends and family and other business associated people gravitated towards me just for business advice and a helping hand. Family members reached out to borrow money, which I could probably do a whole podcast on that story. That's one business advice I can give: don't lend money to family. And what I was finding amongst friends and family who had businesses with great businesses, great ideas, great work ethic, great opportunities, but essentially there was a few things stifling their growth, and that was capital and working cash flow. They were in similar positions that I'd found myself in many years ago, in terms of getting or having to wait a long time to get paid, and a lot of outgoings that they had to cover until they get paid. And they may have started their business up with a lack of cash flow. Their growth might have been exceeding what they would normally have thought, and they may not have been able to get access to bank loans or overdrafts or anything like that. So that was a constant thing that I was seeing. And I suppose it happened a little bit by chance that I was assisting a business in a particular situation of needing cash flow support, where I came across an entity called FIFO, and found out that I could invest into that business and be part of it, essentially to provide a service which FIFO does, which is invoice finance, or what's commonly called factoring, and another service of supply chain finance. So that business enabled me to invest in. It enabled me to utilize my own personal funds to assist in lending to businesses, and it had the services that I'd been familiar with in my time in business and had essentially been recommending to other business. So it was really, as I said, by chance, and a really good fit to fit in where I was sort of at my business career.
Yeah. So how does FIFO work exactly?
So we're a corporate entity that has a group of individual investment partners as part of it, and we essentially lend our own money, private money, to businesses who need it for, as I said, our services of invoice finance and supply chain finance, which I'll go into a little bit more in depth in a few minutes. But being a private lender, we have got different criteria to lending. As I said, the money comes out of our pocket. With the businesses we lend to, we have a connection with it. It's not a business development manager or a bank manager. We're right in tune with that particular business. I think that I can empathise with business, being someone who's been in business and been in a lot of shoes that they may have been in, or our clients may have been in their business life. So I think that I can have that association understanding. So we lend our private money to these businesses, or amongst our FIFO group, we may utilise additional funds from our group within each other, or to lend to each other's businesses who are our clients. That's really our makeup.
Mm-hmm. So I guess so what is this supply chain invoicing thing that you alluded to previously?
Like I said, typically businesses will find themselves in many instances needing cash at some point in their business lives, whether it be a start or growth, or they need to take on more projects. Capital is a lot of time an issue in many of those instances. So we think that we can assist with covering all of those bases. And maybe let's take an instance of a business that's growing. They may be a construction business or a concreting business, for instance. We do a lot of work for those kind of entities in the construction sector. So, they might want to take on more work. They've got the skills, they've got the resources, but they know that if they were to take on a job, that potentially the cost involved is large, and the time taken to get paid is a long time. They just don't necessarily be able to take on those jobs because they can't afford to. And that's where we come in, and we hopefully come in at a situation early enough where we can assist them in putting our facilities in place so that it minimises the cost to their business.
So is it like a bridging finance?
A little bit like a bridging finance, but we probably more refer to it as a bridging gap, whereby, as I said, a concreter might do a job for a client. That client might pay them in 30 or 60 days. Again, too long to wait for that concreter to get paid, because he's got to pay staff, he's got to pay concrete, he's got to pay supplies, he's got to pay a lot of things. And they may have to be paid up front, or they might be on 14-day terms or 7-day terms. So that doesn't marry up with him waiting 60 days for his money, or 30 days for his money or her money, and paying a supplier or paying his wages. So when a concreter submits his invoice, what we can do is we advance him 80% of the value of that invoice as soon as he's done his work.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He's got his capital and cash up front, so he can then go and pay his suppliers and employees, and he can keep his business moving.
Okay.
30 days later or 60 days later, when it comes time to pay, that's when we take that money from his client. We give him back his 20% residual, which you've held on to, less our fee. That's really what we try to do, is to bridge that gap between the time that he gets paid and managing the money that he needs to keep his business going and grow.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like having a credit card without having a credit card.
Yeah, and businesses, may find themselves not being able to get other lines of credit or loans or anything like that to keep their businesses up, because they might need business security. Our securities work a little bit different. We rely on the fact that that particular client has their own client that can pay the bills. If they are okay, then that's when we can normally take on a particular client or project.
Sounds really great. I like that idea. It's helpful for businesses, and it bridges that gap, and and so they don't have a cash flow problem then, and which a lot of businesses do find themselves when vendors don't pay.
Well, we'll just think of a scenario. A client, I'll use the concreter example. His suppliers or his people don't care that he has to wait 60 days. They just care that they've got their money. And the expectation is that a business has got enough money to pay its bills when they become due. In reality, that often doesn't happen. The reality is they're waiting for someone else to get paid, or someone else is waiting. Everyone in the chain or food chain of money is often waiting for someone to get paid. So, what we want to try and do is get it to where it needs to be got, that money, so that businesses can keep turning over and keep moving, and no one lets, no one
goes broke.
And no one goes broke.
In the meantime, while they're waiting for their money.
It happens all the time.
Happen. Yeah, people go into liquidation because of that.
If they're constant late payers, or they're overdue by 7 days, even though they've got the money to pay or someone owes them, it can cause a big issue if someone says, look, I'm not going to supply you anymore because you're always late paying me. Or I'm going to put a black mark on your credit rating because you're always late paying me. It can have a really dramatic effect quite quickly.
Now you've given me some 3 little brochures here. One's the FIFO single factor brochure. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that one?
Yeah, that's just the invoice finance situation. As I said, a business can come to us with a need for cash, and often we can just help without giving them a loan, with just looking at what invoices they have and paying those for them. A business can come to us with one invoice or many invoices, and we can advance them funds on that. So the flexibility is there when it comes to lending against their invoices.
And then you've got the business buy now, pay later, which is much like Afterpay. I suppose that really speaks to itself.
Yeah, it's like a line of credit for a business. It's an unsecured facility, so we don't ask for their house or their firstborn child, which is the case in some banks these days. They want everything. So we will give business access to a certain amount of money, and they can use that then to pay invoices that they need to be paid. We pay those invoices for those clients, and they have up to 90 days to pay us back. Again, another access to working capital as an alternate to a loan that sits in a business's bank account that they can use to pay for whatever they wish. We particularly pay businesses, suppliers or subcontractors out of that working capital facility.
Yeah, and then you've got the capital supply chain finance.
Works pretty similar. However, we're trying to target this particular product to the bigger businesses. And I'll take an example, which I just referenced earlier about the concreter and the builder. The concreter works for the builder, wanting to get paid early all the time. The builder says, sorry, I can't pay you because I'm waiting for money, or I don't want to pay you, but we'd love to, but you'd have to wait your 30, 60 days. That particular concreter, like we mentioned, might be already or needing our invoice supply finance. So what we do is we say to those bigger businesses, you may have all of these other subcontractors or suppliers that are impacted by the fact that you pay them 30, 60, 90 days. That's not a good thing for your business to have subcontractors and suppliers, waiting
that long. Well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it causes all sorts of things: bad subcontractors, potentially bad work, unreliability. So it causes lots of issues when it takes a long time to get paid. So what we say to those bigger businesses is, we'll give you a free access to a line of capital. And out of that, you can then go to your subcontractors and offer them early payment. So if they do come to you for early payment, which they often do, FIFO pays them. They're happy, they take their payment, but they also take a fee, or be charged a fee, to take their money early. So they're quite often happy to do, because that means their business can tick over. When it comes time to paying us back, the business, or who our client is, pays us back at the same time that they would normally pay that supplier, but we share with them some of the fee that their particular supplier has been charged to take their early payment. So free money for the business, they can help their supplier or subcontractor get paid early, and they get a cash rebate in the process if their supplier or subcontractor is taking early payment.
Yeah, the links to those brochures will be left in the show notes. So anyone who wants access to them, they'll be there for you to view, and you can get in touch with Trevor. And speaking about that, where can people find you, Trevor, if they want to know more about what you've discussed today?
Yeah, look, again, I'm coming from, I suppose, a perspective of promoting, my product, and appreciate, Rose, that you're listening to what I have to say about the services that we offer. But again, I'm a business person, not a finance person. So I really love connecting with other businesses who've been in situations or are in situations. I think I count myself lucky that I've got a pretty good network of people that I know: business advisors, business coaches, financial planners, accountants, business broker. Well, I've got a very good network. So if a business wants to connect with me just for a chat or advice, I highly recommend just picking up the phone, or if you're needing someone within my network, happy to help you out. And if it's finance related, definitely happy to sit down and see how our particular services can help a business grow, or help out of a sticky situation in terms of cash flow. And also to that is how our services can be potentially assistance as well as not costing you any money. And by that I mean it will cost you some money, but we want to put in place some systems and procedures that allow that the fees that we charge to not essentially come out of your bottom line, and show you that having, I suppose, a lack of working capital or cash flow issues can cost you more than you think it might cost you to fix the problem, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. It's I've not heard of that service before. I mean, I know that you've had it for a little while, and you tried to explain it to me once before. It actually makes sense now. It didn't at the time.
Yeah, it's funny the amount of people that come to us that I didn't know your service existed, or I wish I knew it a little while ago. I've just got a high interest loan from Loan Sharks R Us, and so it's remarkable. There's a lot of information out there, of course, but sometimes people just don't know what to click or what to look for when they're in that business situation, and sometimes it's a situation where they're in dire straits of getting capital or cash flow, and they don't know where to turn to. They might turn to their accountant, who might not have that information. It's one of those things that is getting a bit more mainstream and more accepted in the business marketplace, particularly now where everyone's trying to slow down paying everyone.
Yeah. Yes, it's becoming a thing again, where people are, not in a hurry to pay the bills that they need to pay. I'm finding myself with that at the moment, and it's not making me a happy chappy.
I can understand.
Trevor, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. I will put all your social links and things in the show notes. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you and to find out what you've been up to. And congratulations. I really like this, I can't think of the word, the innovation of this particular service. I think it's really needed, especially now, not so much, a few years ago, but now I think, people coming out of the pandemic and, getting back to work and doing all that stuff. I think a lot of people have been finding that their cash flow is not as healthy as what they had first believed it to be, and I think this service is quite a little handy thing to have around, and more people need to know about it.
Plenty of businesses look at their profit and loss and see a profit or a loss or the money coming in, but they just wonder where it all is, and we can try and help them find that, as well as, again, just give some free friendly advice on growth and a coffee or a chinwag or whatever it is.
Good, and you won't miss out with Trevor. He's one of the friendliest people I know.
Thanks, Rose.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. Look after your chooks in Melbourne. Keep safe.
Will do. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.